so many buddies of mine think, okay, I'm gonna make this much. This is what it costs to build the restaurant in day one.
No.
What if something goes wrong?
Hey guys, I'm Bill Rancic, and my new podcast, Dollar Bill, will help you build a brighter financial future for yourself and for your family. Let's get to work. So 13 years ago, the idea of RPM restaurants was created. My wife, Juliana, sat me down and she said, I'm from Italy and my mom has all these great recipes from my grandmother and we should open up an Italian restaurant. And I thought it was the craziest idea I'd ever heard. But she kept staying on it. And I knew if we were going to do this, it was all about people. So I was introduced to a gentleman named R.J. Melman and his brother Jared and his sister Molly, and they'd been in the restaurant business their whole lives. And they were amazing operators that opened up tons of restaurants throughout the country. And I knew if I was going to do this, I couldn't do it alone. And lo and behold, we courted each other, and we decided that we all had the same values and morals and work ethic, and we opened up RPM Italian. And then from there, we opened up RPM Steak, and then RPM in Washington, D.C., and RPM Italian in Las Vegas, and RPM Seafood, and RPM Events. And it turned out to be this booming business. But the moral of my story is that we couldn't have done it alone. And many times in life and in business, you can't go it alone. There's a great saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, surround yourself around the right people. So, ladies and gentlemen, my first guest is Sam Bakhshandehpour. Amazing entrepreneur, had an amazing career. You started out with JP Morgan before you came over to Jose Andres Group. Tell me more though about the childhood. Grow up with money? Did you not grow up with money? Take me through that journey.
No, I have the very common immigrant story.
Okay.
I moved to the U.S. when I was 6 years old as a political refugee.
Wow.
From Iran.
Yeah.
And my father wasn't so fortunate to come out with my mother and me. He got captured, and it took a couple years to escape the country because he worked for the Shah of Iran at the time.
Yep.
Political asylum, very grateful, started the American dream.
Yeah.
And, the irony is started the American dream around a family meal, and it brought our family back together, and the rest was history.
I always say my wife came to America when she was 9 from Italy. Very similar story.
Right.
I mean, didn't know English. It was just a place where you were going to build a better life. And I mean, look at where you're at now. So you come to America, go to college, get out of college, go to work for JP Morgan. You're working on investments, investing in restaurants and the hospitality industry.
Yeah, it was a funny story. I had a 12-year run at Morgan in their investment bank. Loved my group, and it was the American dream. And the day I became managing director, I gave my business card to my dad, and he was in tears because his son had reached that pinnacle of the American dream. Wow. So fast forward, I go to his house and I say, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to leave JP Morgan." He's like, "What?" I said, "I'm going to leave JP Morgan and I'm going to work for a nightclub restaurant company that's launching a hotel chain."
Oh, God.
And the disappointment on his face,
yeah,
you might as well told him that, I'm quitting working and I'm going to go take some other job that,
travel around with the Grateful Dead.
Literally. He said, I'm going to go run a hospitality company working for a private equity firm. It never translated until I had him and my late uncle in Vegas at Bazaar Meat.
Got it.
And we had one of the most incredible meals, and that experience.
Yeah, of course.
And he turned to me, he goes, "You didn't tell me this is what you're doing."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Well, I'm not cooking the food. I'm sharing this experience with the people."
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's funny because when people think about hospitality in the restaurant business, they think of a mom and pop. Right. In most instances, working the cash register, slinging.
Sure.
They don't see it the way our businesses are run, where it's more of a corporate entity. A lot of people may not know this, but we're going to be neighbors soon, and we'll get into that journey. We'll talk about that later. But in Las Vegas. But how do you connect with Jose then? So you're working in private equity.
Yeah, we launched a hotel chain where Jose he did his first restaurant outside of DC as our executive chef partner.
Okay,
launching the Bazaar concept.
Yep.
And we expanded from Beverly Hills to Miami to Vegas, ended up selling that private equity firm stake. And the first investment I did, I actually invested in Jose's company and bought the Bazaar back.
Got it.
And at that time, sitting around the table with him, I said, "Look, this is such a special experience. everyone who goes through these doors walks away with that wow factor, like what just happened? Let's elevate this experience, grow it out globally. And about 4.5 years ago, he asked me to come in-house with the board of directors, said, look, I need help setting strategy, growing this to the next level. Will you come and run this? Came in-house, running the restaurants, and then we launched a media business as well. But it started with one restaurant.
Yeah.
Like all the entrepreneurs out there, it was one restaurant in the heart of DC when I was at Georgetown.
Wow.
Called Haleo, and he was the wild, energetic chef in the back doing Perón shots of cava and had dollar croquetas, which is all I could afford at the time, and started with one.
Wow, that's amazing.
31 years ago.
And he's a American success story as well. When you think about, he came to this country and virtually had nothing, was able to build this. But so when you came on board to where you're at now, take me through the growth progression. Oftentimes when you've got an owner that you're working for, you're the CEO, but it can get a little bit dicey and tense, and you've got big personalities in this type of business. So, let's just show me the journey on kind of coming in and
look
4 years in now.
It starts, and I'm by background, I'm a finance guy, right? So I understand strategy, capitalization, the business side, but I've always had such an appreciation for the creative culinary talents of chefs and the creative industry as a whole, whether it's fashion, music, food. They're the ones that define culture. They're the ones that advance civilization. And us finance guys sit there and put a framework around it to create more jobs and spur the economic growth. Coming in, I always respected Jose for his talent. I always loved the man for his heart. What I realized I could add value is really setting forth the strategy and structure and some processes, protocols, underwriting, and that sometimes goes against the creative process because creative talents don't want to have boxes put around them. They never hit perfection because they're artists by nature and it's never perfected. So at some point we need to come in and say, it's good.
Yeah.
B, they're never comfortable having a box put around what their creative genius can do. So to find this balance of letting the creativity run, which is the real essence, the DNA of what we lead with, it's always culinary first, but really having a business strategy and underwriting and costing things out and getting the right deal structures, that's where I take pride in being able to bridge that. But there's tense moments, there's disagreements, creatives are not shy.
No.
They share their opinions openly and they're passionate about what they do, which is what makes them great. And what I try to do is really, I have an appreciation for that, but I also know I have a responsibility to our employees, I have a responsibility to our investors and the outside community. So trying to be that balancing, voice in the middle. Always it doesn't work as well as I like it to.
Were you there during the pandemic at all?
I was. I joined, Jose definitely had some inside baseball. I joined shortly before the pandemic.
Wow.
And, the first tour of duty was survival. In which we all in our business, I think, navigated it. It's a Harvard Business School case study one day, how this restaurant industry banded together and fought our way to where we are today.
What did you do? Like, for people watching, because everyone goes through trials and stresses, whether it's dad got laid off from his job. There's a million things that happen to people every single day. In the restaurant business, this was catastrophic. Right. And if you look at what happened, how did you navigate it? Give me the specifics and I'll share with you kind of what we did.
Yeah, it's funny, Bill. We sat there in that board meeting and it was, that mid-March time frame when everything shut down. And I turned to one of our board members, I go, look, I didn't underwrite a downside case where the business is down 98%. And I actually the other day was looking at that board deck I pulled together. I said, look, best case scenario, it's a 1 to 2 week shutdown. But realistically, it's going to last longer. It'll probably be close to a month. Worst case, it may be 5-6 weeks, but we're going to get out of this thing and business will be back 80% to 100%. It goes to show you how little I know. And I'm the business guy, right? So I sat there, I was just flipping through that deck because just for kicks. One of the things that Jose did, and I admire the man so much, he said, look, we're not laying off our employees without giving them runway. And if I have to, I'm willing to dilute my ownership stake in this company and pay millions to make sure that our employees have a job until we see what the heck is happening out there. So for a span of 5 weeks, he funded, and at the time we had, 1,200 employees.
Yeah.
He funded every single dishwasher, cook, server, all the way up to managers. We funded it off balance sheet, and Jose got diluted.
Wow.
And we don't even talk about that as much as thinking through it in our boardroom, but that's the heart of the man.
Yeah.
And as we got out of it, we furloughed was the first thing.
Yep.
We converted our business into delivery, which is, my business.
Yeah.
We're not a delivery company,
neither are
right?
we.
This is about the in-person experience, the energy, the vibrancy.
And a lot of times the food doesn't travel well.
Doesn't travel
You know what I mean?
well.
These little plastic containers. It's just
We pivoted. It's the beauty of our industry. Like, people have a heart and they're feeding people. That's what it's about at the end of the day. So they figured it out.
Yeah.
There's no playbook for it. The first playbook we put together, we had our crazy mascot, Masky, and all the safety protocols. We figured out how to do delivery. We figured out a very concise menu of dishes that would travel better, that we could pump out.
the right margin.
And so the right margin. And simultaneously, we used our kitchens as centers to feed first responders.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we were shut down in New York, we turned our Spanish diner kitchen and our Mercado Little Spain kitchen into the headquarters for World Central Kitchen, who went out and they're feeding first responders. And that put a lot of people back to work.
Yep.
Where they're saying, what better way? I'm cooking and feeding those that are taking care of us during this unprecedented times. But that was the business model, was just survival. Then it was, no one talks about it. I'm like, the government stepped up.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for PPP, and I'm very grateful, if it wasn't for PPP, we would have been in a world of hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
They stepped up, and they stepped up quickly, and they funded us and, allowed us to kind of inch our way back. And slowly but surely, we recovered.
And I think for a lot of people, and the RPM Restaurant Group as well, through a crisis, you're able to take a deeper dive into things. And when you have crisis in your life, there's always going to be some good that comes out of it. And we trimmed more fat, right? Like the amount of cell phone bills we were paying for people who weren't even with the company anymore, right? Like we really got, RJ Melman, who's my partner and runs the day-to-day, like he was able to come out of this so much better off, right? We were able to figure out what we really needed, what we didn't, trim so much waste. How did you guys come out of it better as a result? I mean, it was painful and it was awful, and I never wanted it to happen again.
Listen, you've built RPM to where it is because you focus on the experience and you deliver an exceptional product. And city to city, you've maintained that consistency. We similarly use the pandemic as an opportunity to do the things that really a culinary first restaurateur doesn't like to do. Whether you have one unit or you have 80 units, focusing on those cell phone bills and the attention to detail, we went line item by line item on the P&L and said, what's a waste? What is a must-have? What's a nice-to-have? What's a must-have, nice-to-have, and waste? Cut the waste. Unfortunately, had to cut the nice-to-haves during that period of time. But we really honed in on what's critical to that guest experience at the end of the day. And then you underwrite a new business. We went through an opportunity to reset on the business, really clean house from the standpoint of underperforming properties. Those are marginally positive, but really more of a distraction. We approached our landlords and used that as an opportunity, and they were wonderful partners and said, look, if we make money, you make money. If we're not making money, you shouldn't make money because that's misalignment. So we flipped things into percentage rents at the time. Food costing, we looked at, what are the dishes that are hero items that are selling incredibly well? What are the ones that are not selling incredibly well? What cost those out? So we costed out all the products at another level, which we hadn't done historically. And honestly, it was kind of like spring cleaning. That you're emptying the drawer and then putting it back and then being like, you know what? I don't need this stuff. We came out of it a lot stronger. And we also, part of the great fortune of having Jose and this mission-oriented, purpose-driven company was hiring and recruiting. We bet on projects during the pandemic and said, look, and this was my pitch to the board. I said, guys, either hospitality is going to come roaring back because people are starved for that.
Yeah.
Or we have much, much bigger problems.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate. We made a bet that hospitality would come back. So we expanded. We doubled the size of the company. And then we were really betting on people. We attracted a lot of talent.
Well, you seized opportunities too, because there was a lot of open space, and unfortunately, there were a lot of
big time.
Yeah. So the great, blue chip locations came available, which is great. I don't know if this happens to you, but you're involved in a high profile restaurant group, me as well. People always stop me and they'll be like, I got this idea, my grandma, and I want to make this, and I want to open this restaurant. Like, what do you say to those people? Like, because the failure rate is just astronomical. I mean, it's 90% or 88% failure rate of these new restaurants that open. So what do you tell people?
I default to my sandbox of comfort zone, and I start talking math. And I say, first, follow your passion. Because everyone who, I'm thinking of a conference. Well, Jose and I had lunch at a sushi place recently, and we had one of our old chefs join us. And he starts talking about his concept, which is actually a really thoughtful concept around cocos. And we were sitting there, and he walked me through it, and it's all culinary. And he's passionate, and I know he's arguably one of the best chefs we've worked with. Had that entrepreneurial bug, wanted to go out on his own. And I said, Chef, how much are you going to generate in revenues? And it was a range. And I said, okay, well, what's the profitability? And he gave me a percentage. And I walked him through food cost, labor, and gave him a percentage. I said, okay, so each unit will make X. And I said, how much is it to build out a space? And he gave me a number, and I said, Chef, that's a 10-year payback on that money. Who are you getting that money from? And he goes, I hadn't thought about that. And I said, it's real simple math. You're generating X. These are my revenues. These are my expenses. This is how much, we use fancy four-wall EBITDA, but these are the profits. This is what it costs to actually build my restaurant, and that's the payback. And then I said, well, how long is the ramp? He goes, what do you mean? I go, I guarantee you're not opening this thing humming on all cylinders. You're going to have to fund losses. Maybe it's 6 months.
And the build out. I mean, it's an 8 to 12 month build out.
Completely. Yeah. And it's so funny. I have so many buddies of mine and family members where they think, okay, I'm going to make this much. This is what it costs to build the restaurant. And day one, I'm off to the races. Where you're like, what if something goes wrong? And like LA, it rains a lot, and you open in December, and you're stuck with 4 or 5 months of rainy season.
No one coming in.
And that's why so many restaurants fail in their first year.
Right.
And it's just...
So is it that they're undercapitalized?
If they're undercapitalized and they don't anticipate the ramp you need and the road you need to get... I mean, look, RPM, we're fortunate. We have professionals underwriting. We know how to build these out. You have training staffs. But for a mom and pop who's coming in... Without any of that infrastructure, it's tough.
I mean, I hate you, and I'm with you, because the failure rate, but I never want to tell someone not to follow their dreams. So it's a fine line, right? Because my first business was a company called Cigars Around the World, and it was in 1994. I was right out of college. It was a mail order.
Nice.
5 cigars sent your home, but everyone told me I was crazy, horrible idea, But it made me, I made my first $1 million doing it, and it was like the best thing I ever did, risky. So, how cautious can you be? Like, it's a fine line between being cautious and then, Howie Mandel and I talked in an episode, and, you can't spell nothing without no, right?
Right.
So he's like, you should never say no. But how would you advise people watching, to take that risk reward ratio, and how do you properly implement that?
Listen, we're in the businesses we're in because we have passion and we love what we do. So I always say passion is important. You have to chase what you love to do.
Yeah.
But there's risk and there's calculated risk. And in our industry, just literally a half-hour conversation happening with the chef at that sushi counter, I'm like, look, these are just pitfalls that you need to study and learn and diligence and anticipate. Understand the whole picture. And it's not saying now go work in a cubicle doing something you don't want to do for 18 hours a day. It's follow your passion, but truly analyze and take yourself out of your comfort zone. Too often, and look, I see it in our company, it's like too often we love creating.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to be the guy who comes out and says, you know what, we've created enough.
Yeah.
I would never thought I'd say this. We're all about innovation,
Yeah.
but it's okay actually to standardize something and say the next location is just going to look like the last location because this market loved it. That market's going to love it. I think it's that anticipation of what else should I be focused on in making it a calculated risk versus I'm following my passion. I want to jump both feet in. I just hope the water's warm, you know.
How much does ego get in the way? Because the restaurant business is an ego business.
Yeah, I think like every industry, ego is, you know, and like ego is not all necessarily bad because I think that self-confidence that comes from part of ego is actually a positive thing because you're betting on yourself. Ego becomes detrimental when you don't listen and you have all the answers, even though you don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And conviction and making statements that are forceful and this is the way it is without having that foundation, that's the ego that gets our industry, you know, in trouble more often than not.
And when you're going in to find a new location, what do you look for? Because, and whether it's the restaurant business, whether you're opening up a law firm, whatever it is that's not a law firm, but whatever it is that requires the public's participation, what do you look for? And I'll share with you what we look for.
Yeah, listen, I do the same thing that I would encourage, you know, anyone who is out there looking to start a restaurant. We follow, it should be the exact same script. First thing we look for is who's your customer? So who are you targeting? And if we're opening, you know, if we're opening Zaytinya next door to you guys, you know, it's like, who's our customer? Well, they're shopping in forum shops, they're staying in the casinos. The casinos around us have a certain price point to come in. So we have thousands of room over our head and a destination for retail and dining. Know your customer. What are they willing to spend? And if that fits what we're trying to do, that's a good match. Then I look at the competitive set. So we say, okay, you know what? RPM's next door. You got the other competitor, Jones is over there. So you look around, you're like, who else is in my proximity? How do we slot ourselves in from a price point standpoint, from a culinary standpoint? Then we actually take it a level deeper. Some markets like Vegas is experiential. Vegas always wants over the top. They want something else. You know, this isn't just you stop at the culinary. So how do we actually add other elements of entertainment into the mix? Whereas certain places, it's about speed of execution and they want quick because it's office building. So we study what building are we going into, who's our competition, who's our customer, and then we figure out if we can slot in. And I always say the best deals for us on real estate, you know, how we expand, we have the right partner. So it's the character of who you're getting in bed with first and foremost on the real estate side. I'll leave all commentary aside.
We love David Simon. We love you, David.
Bingo. We love you, David. So you find the right partner. Then you get the right deal and then the right location. And not necessarily in that order, but we'd always have that triangle where even, you know, within the right location, there's the right location, and then you get the right partner and make sure you're protected on your deal. Usually a recipe that gives you a higher probability of success.
And so Sam is opening up a restaurant in Las Vegas next to RPM Italian in Las Vegas. Hopefully it's opened in the next 8 months, 7 months.
We hope so, yeah, we're excited.
But it's a great spot, it's a great location. You know, when you go to open that, you know, much like any other business, take me through the opening process.
So
I don't need inside baseball.
No. So we start off once we've picked the location and the concept, we've done the underwriting. We look at the development process. So we have a design and development officer who leads the way with his team, working with our designer. On that one, it's David Rockwell.
He does ours too.
So we're, you know that process. We lay out a construction schedule, and then obviously there's, in partnership with Simon, we're going through that construction process. Simultaneously, our culinary team is perfecting the Vegas-centric, because even though it's Zaytinya, there's elements of it that'll be more bespoke to that market, some unique. So 80-20. 80% is the best of, 20% is localized. Culinary is working on perfecting the menus. Then we have our SWAT team of training and the task force coming in saying, between, when we get TCO and the turnover of the property till opening, these are all the things that need to take place well in advance of that, months in it. And we actually have weekly calls on our Zaytinya critical path call for Vegas. And it's the laundry list of 400 things that need to happen across the board, who's responsible, and what's the update. And they go through it very methodically, organized, and that cadence picks up as you get closer and closer. Then we come into, once we take over the property, the training starts, they start unwrapping everything and cooking, and we have friends and family, and then we typically open with a soft opening to allow us to, get...
It's almost... I mean, I feel like
I'm telling you, that's why I'm excited to be neighbors.
Yeah, it's the same playbook.
Yeah, until you ramp it and,
a couple of practice parties, work out the kinks, have friends and family come.
Big time. And invite the friends and family who are the most critical, not the yes men.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes men and yes women. It's the ones that'll come and tear it apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the ones we like the most.
Yeah. So where do you go? Where do you take the Jose Andres Group from here?
So we have a very simple expansion strategy. We have over 20 brands that have been created over 30 years.
It's amazing.
Some of the brands are faster growing than others. We love hotels, given my background. We know the value we add to hotel partners because we drive traffic and we help the hotels get top rate. On the flip side, we love our partnership with Simon. We're walking before we run. We have 2 projects in Vegas. We're opening at Crystals here, in a couple of months this summer. And then later in the year, we're going to have our project together in Forum Shops. And then we're doing Stanford Mall as well.
Oh, wow.
So we have 3, but we'd love to explore that partnership. Yes. They pick the best real estate and best-in-class retailers. So we're going to grow through those 2 channels. The brands we're growing with primarily is Bazaar and Zaytinya, our 2 fastest. But we have this beautiful collection of affordable luxury, as we call it, from Jaleo to China Poblano to, other Oyamel, our Mexican concept, that are, approachable, fun, lively, proven brands. And then I'm trying to figure out our international strategy. I just got back from Dubai, and I was in Riyadh.
Sunday.
Oh, are you? Nice.
Dubai Sunday.
We opened up Atlantis the Royal. Love to host you.
That's where I'm staying.
Oh, are you? Perfect.
I'll be there on Monday.
Amazing. You should. We'll connect to get you into Jaleo. But that market's booming. The restaurants there. I think RPM would do exceptionally well there. They love brands, and your product would fit nicely. But we're trying to do more in the region. Middle East makes sense. We have partners in Asia. Yeah. We're exploring our Asian strategy.
Are those licensing deals?
Those are licensing deals, but licensing with control. I say, we're not just going to hand our brand off. So we have the right control, again, right partner. You hand your brand to, they'll protect it. Wrong partner, they'll destroy it.
And you probably learn that by making mistakes. And I always say you learn more from your mistakes than you do your successes.
Absolutely.
What were some of the big mistakes you've made over the last 5
years? How long is this show, Bill?
Oh, we got plenty of time.
I made a lot of mistakes.
You want to...
We've chased deals before, and, the old adage, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
I live by some of the best deals I ever did were the ones I didn't do.
I like that. It's fact. And when you chase a deal in economics, you end up spending 80% of your time on the distraction versus growth and making money. And that's happened more times than, I'm very open. It's happened a lot, and they were lucrative deals on the surface. You get into it. They end up costing you actually a lot more. The deal side, because I focus obviously a lot of my time on the deal, I think when culinary ends up becoming bespoke over and over again, and taking something that's proven and trying to over-engineer it, that has presented challenges for us in the past. Where we've opened without the proper underwriting, and a lot of this is before my time, but desktop underwriting is great when you're having a casual conversation, but you're not investing millions.
Right.
Behind that, you need to get very granular, anticipate seasonality. Right. We opened a restaurant downtown LA, beautiful restaurant, outdoor called Aqua Viva. It rains in LA and we're soft in LA. When it dips below 65, 60 degrees, might as well be 30.
We're wearing shorts and t-shirts in Chicago.
Totally. We're not going out to sit in an outdoor restaurant. But when you look at the underwriting, we didn't anticipate seasonality, and the restaurant's doing great. The hotel, Conrad, is doing exceptionally well. But there is an element of you have to get that granular, like 4th of July falls on a Tuesday. That Monday, what does that do for business? Right. What about that Wednesday?
That's right.
These are the mistakes we made in the past where we haven't gotten that granular on underwriting. And, you pay for it, and then build out cost.
Don't even
love designers,
talk to me about that.
what's functional and again, what's nice to have and beautiful. And I love art, but you need to balance that out with the science of it. And sometimes build out costs, run off if you don't keep them, in check.
There's an old saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I really believe that. And I know, what you and Jose have been doing has been incredible. I mean, your mission is to feed the world and help, those who have nothing. Tell everyone, some people who are watching may not know, but I mean, you guys step up whenever there's a crisis, whenever there's need, and, give us the philosophy behind that.
Yeah, so, the company has a singular mission, change the world through the power of food. Mm-hmm. And I always say, yes, we have a nonprofit that's outside of my purview, completely independent. But at the end of the day, it's the plate of food that has the power. Mm-hmm. And it has the power of you give quality nutrition to people, they think more clearly, their emotions are more in check. Right. You bring a quality plate of food and oftentimes a nice bottle of wine. No matter how much you and I disagree on the topic of the day, you walk away agreeing that was an incredible meal and Bill is a very decent man. Mm-hmm. And this is the power of food. We do have the nonprofit where Jose launched this with his co-founder, Rob Wilder, about 12 years ago or so. And it was meant to feed people in disaster relief. Yeah. And the heart and soul of the mission is to make sure you get food to those in need, period. It wasn't meant to be political. It wasn't meant to be this side or that side. Anyone who's in need, you deploy quickly. You feed them first because every second counts when someone is hungry and in a state of fear. Yeah. And they've done an exceptional job, whether it's through the pandemic. It started with the earthquake in Haiti and Puerto Rico. Yep. More recently, the last 2 years has been around war zones in Ukraine and in Gaza and Israel. And, we've had a very difficult month where, our friends unfortunately passed due to the missile strike. And you look back on that and say, these are people who deployed to feed people. They
only wanted to help.
Yeah. Didn't stop them. They're back. The group is back and set up kitchens and they're feeding people in Gaza right now. Yeah. So the essence, again, I go back to that plate of food is meant to be shared. It's meant to bring people together. We love having that mission, and it's, again, World Central Kitchen's entirely separate, but it doesn't change the fact that it helps really unite our team. Everyone plays for that name on the front of the jersey, Jose Andres Group. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing, and you and I live similar lives on the road, traveling away from our families, but it's done with passion because there's a bigger mission here. Yeah. And whether it's in our restaurants, bringing people together of all walks of life, all thoughts, races, religions, and having that shared experience, or the men and women, the brave soldiers of World Central Kitchen, delivering food to people in need. Yeah. That's the power that food has in this world. And I take a lot of pride in being affiliated with a company and leading the charge at a company that has that as its mission.
It's a great mission. Yeah. I mean, I think
it's very cool.
More companies are hopefully being inspired by this and following your lead and trying to solve the world problems.
Because, I appreciate that.
Together we can do anything, and alone, not much. So
absolutely.
It's really inspiring to see. And I love the story and I love how, you deliver when needed, and we've got a huge problem in America right now with food insecurity, and it's like, it's one person at a time, that's all it takes. You don't have to solve the problem, but if you just, make a little bit of a difference each day and a little bit each day, that's all you can do. So
we're doing our part, and it's nice to see, especially the younger generation, how passionate they are about tackling these issues that I'm looking at you and our generation where you knew it was there, but the passion that, our kids are approaching this and the belief and conviction they have that they can make a difference. We're in good hands.
I think the world's getting better.
I completely agree with you.
We've got an audience member question. Is that okay
Amazing,
with you?
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Chef Ross Melling, owner of our divisions here in Upper Valley, California. Sam, as market changes, how do you keep up with guest expectations? Keep the momentum going?
It's a terrific question. It's actually what I do day to day, and that's my responsibility and our team's responsibility to anticipate where the puck is going. One of the things that I often do, and similar to you, Bill, we travel the world,
Yep.
and we're constantly evaluating and taking in the best of globally. One example I'll give you is this trend around mocktails.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the younger generation, and a lot of these newer concepts coming up have taken larger and larger percentages of their real estate, of their menus, with mocktail that has mixology techniques on par with the best mixologists that you have or I have.
Yeah.
And it's a trend that is not a fad. It's actually something that I think will continue. So we came in-house and made the bet. And this was literally 2 years ago. It's just starting. You started seeing a lot of mocktails pop up and the requests. The one short answer is we listen. And we listen to our guests. And when they come in, you hear about what are they asking for more often than not. What are changes? And then you observe.
Mm-hmm.
And observing, we're small plates. And we always say it's great for you to take a risk when you're small plates. I have my go-tos, but the fact that they're small plates, I'm going to take a risk and try something new. And we're watching this sharing component. So we're constantly collecting that feedback. And in our company, the best ideas aren't actually from the top. They're actually the boots on the ground.
Right, they're the ones listening.
So we've created channels where we're promoting and anticipating regularly getting ideas from them.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing in the field? What are the guests asking for? What's worked well? What hasn't worked well? And that's the innovation piece, because at the end of the day, where the trends are going, you need to try things out and test it to see how they work, but you need to really be observant.
Yeah.
The beauty of this day and age is we have access with our phones. You get to see the entire world.
Right.
You can literally sit there with diligence, and our teams, they are in deep, seeing what others are doing. But it reminds me of a conversation I had with Jose. I actually had our culinary team come out to a certain market. I said, hey, this is a new market for us. Let's go on an R&D trip and diligence the market. And I set up a restaurant tour, and we had a beautiful day. I came back, and I said, Jose, it was really productive. We did R&D. And he goes, you didn't do R&D. That's discovery, which you should do. And because I asked him, I said, you should join. He goes, I do what I believe and I focus on and create magic. So he looks inward.
Yeah, interesting.
And the rest of us are looking outward.
Yep.
And that's the balance of it, because he's the creative genius, and our culinary team, they're creators. So they're creating those trends.
They're leading.
They're leading.
And other people
they're
are
the
following.
ones who are actually creating the trend.
Right.
They're the ones. Jose's the one who started with half a dozen things that are now copied with small plates.
But I think in order to create the trend, you said it best, you got to have your blinders off. You got to have peripheral vision, because you got to see what's happening in the world, right? Like everyone's got a cold tub in their backyard now, and they're taking cold bath. Like what? Like the world is changing, and if you're living your life with that tunnel vision, you're never going to have the ability to create and to invent and to do things like that. So we got some great takeaway today. One is, don't be afraid to leave your comfort zone, right? I think that's very critical. 2, the power of people, right? You got to find the right people, treat those people like gold, and it will come back to you tenfold. What's one last takeaway that you would tell your child, or my son comes up to you and says, Sam, I want to be a successful entrepreneur like you. What's one thing you would tell him to do?
Resiliency. And the beauty of being an entrepreneur is no matter how much you analyze, put business plans together and be like, this is the winning pitch deck to success with the right underwriting, never works out that way.
That's right.
You will fall down, you will have challenges, and it's like being a quarterback. The defense throws you something, you call an audible with confidence, and you shift on the fly, and you need to be resilient. Because knowing that it's not failure, it's not setback. These are things that are catapult you to the next level, and it's just the lens that you look at it through, especially in our industry. More things will go quote unquote wrong than they will right, but you got to get up, keep going.
It's an adapt or become extinct.
Bingo.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, Sam.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Bill. This was wonderful.
Thank you.